For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to Strat News Global. Early this month, the Indian Air Force started taking deliveries of the first systems of the S-400 air defense missile. What is the importance of this missile and what does it bring to the table is the focus of this week's Simply Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So the much discussed and debated S-400 air defense missile system has begun to come to India. Soon, they will be deployed at various locations along the border, either on the western front or on the northern front. The Air Force, the Indian Air Force in fact, will be taking charge of these systems to make sure that India's skies are protected and are safe from intruding flying objects, be it an unmanned aerial vehicle, an armed drone, a fighter jet, or any other possible missile that may be launched by India's adversaries, either Pakistan or China. Why is the S-400 manufactured in Russia, designed there, and of course sold by the Russians to India and other countries, called a game changer? That's the big question in everybody's mind. Now, as the name denotes, S-400, what does 400 signify? Well, that's the range of the detection that the S-400 missile defense system has. It can detect incoming objects at a distance of 400 kilometers. Although it can have a surveillance capability of 600 kilometers, 400 kilometers is the time or the space or the distance at which the missile system, the defensive missile system, can hit an incoming target. That's why it's called S-400. The Russians are already designing and developing missile systems of the same family, which has a range of 500 kilometers and even 600 kilometers, to be called S-500 and maybe S-600, as we have seen in recent reports. But for India, S-400 for the time being is sufficient. Why is it sufficient for strengthening India's air defense? Let's take the Western Front with Pakistan. Now, the range of the S-400, as I mentioned, is 400 kilometers to destroy an incoming object. But it can detect, like we said, an object taking off from anywhere near the 600 kilometer range. Now, from the Indian border, India-Pakistan border, the Pakistani Air Force bases are all well within the range of 600 kilometer distance. So any fighter jet taking off in Pakistan or any jet taking off in Pakistan, provided the S-400s are deployed along the India-Pakistan border, can be detected the moment they take off from any of these airfields. Similarly, any of the unmanned aerial vehicles or a missile launched from Pakistan, which does not have too much breadth from west to east, as the country is physically located not very far from India's borders, from Punjab, where mostly the S-400 may be deployed for air defense. These incoming objects can be detected the moment they take off. That brings in a capability that will give India the advantage, the Indian Air Force and the Indian military the advantage of keeping a track of hostile objects coming from Pakistan. Suppose the S-400s were available to India during the dogfight on 27th February 2019, when Wing Commander, now Group Captain Abhinandan, took on the F-16s and shot down one F-16 at an aerial fight over Jammu over Jammu and Kashmir. That time, if S-400s were available, then India would have had early warning, much earlier warning than what they got at that time. So that brings in a huge capability against Pakistan. Against China, the advantage for the Indian Air Force by deploying S-400s is something different. While the Chinese have tried to obviate the disadvantage that they have in terms of There are fighter jets being based in Tibet, which is a high altitude desert where fighter jets have a reduced ability to carry payloads of ordnance, that is bombs and missiles, because of the thin air that pervades the high altitude areas of Tibet. The Chinese have tried to overcome that disadvantage by deploying as many ballistic and conventional missiles as possible to make sure that they attack Indian targets, valuable targets and valuable positions before the Air Force comes into play, the PLA Air Force comes into play. Indian Air Force, on the other hand, is far better placed because its fighter jets take off from the airfields that are located in the plains. If you come from east to west, the fighter jet bases are located in the plains of Assam, for instance, at Chabua and Tejpur and Jorat, and other fields in the Siliguri corridor. If you come to further west towards Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand, then there are fields like Bareilly and Gorakhpur. And it goes on till the west, where in Ambala, in Suratgarh in Rajasthan, in Amritsar, and in Srinagar and Jammu. All these air bases are located in the plains areas where these fighter jets can take off. They need not take off from Ladakh or from Arunachal Pradesh. Therefore, they have an advantage of the Indian Air Force planes have the advantage of carrying much more payload against their adversaries or their adversary in the north, that is China. So the Chinese had tried to overcome that disadvantage by placing missiles aimed at India. Now the S-400, which is an air defense system, obviates or sort of neutralizes the missile power of the Chinese in Tibet. If the Chinese launch missiles from Tibet or even further deep, the S-400s can detect and destroy those missiles. Remember, the S-400 has the ability to detect 10 incoming objects at the same time and then destroy it. It's a very potent system. It has no comparison across the world except for, I think, an American system, a very expensive American system, perhaps called the Patriot air defense system. And it gives an easy access to technology that the Russians have developed. So therefore, when the decision was taken by the Government of India, by the Ministry of Defense and the Air Force to procure S-400s, the Americans were up in arms. In fact, even today, there is a bit of an uncertainty that the US administration might impose the CATSA provisions or the countering the Russian equipment and sanctioning the Russian entities because they are, according to the American legislation, helping the American adversaries. So therefore, India is in a peculiar position, peculiar bind. While it is importing and buying Russian equipment, the Americans have threatened sanction against India. The big political question here is, will the Americans dare do that? Do they want to lose India as a friend at a time when there is a huge churn in the Indian Ocean region, in the Indo-Pacific, as the Americans like to call it? Perhaps not. And therefore, there is a lot of debate in America whether India should be given an exception, whether there should be a waiver. That notwithstanding, India has already started taking deliveries as a Russian official announced. There has been no word officially from the Indian government about having taken deliveries from Russia. Remember that. India will do it quietly. It might be deployed on the Western Front, it might be deployed on the Northern Front. Those locations will hardly be known. No Air Force or the Army or the Navy would like to give away the location to the general public or even to its adversaries. So therefore, that will remain largely a secret. But that notwithstanding, some of the abilities and the capabilities of S-400 is something that we must know. It has a target speed, maximum target speed of 17,000 kilometers an hour. If it is homed onto a target, it can travel the incoming object missile from the S-400 system can travel at the rate of 17,000 kilometers an hour. The target detection, as I mentioned, distance is about 600 kilometers. Range against, maximum range against incoming object for destroying it is 400 kilometers. Minimum is 2 kilometers. So what the S-400 brings to the table is its maneuverability and flexibility. It has three different ranges of missiles which can take on incoming targets. It has a short-range missile, it has a medium-range missile, and it has a long-range missile. So it can also do against a tactical ballistic missile, the maximum detection range or target range is 60 kilometers. So a ballistic missile launched from 60 kilometer away can also be destroyed by the S-400 if it is detected in time. So it's easy to operate, it's easy to maintain according to the claims by the manufacturers. The Indian Air Force actually homed on to S-400 after a lot of study. How does it suit India's operational philosophy and India's needs? All that was taken into consideration before the S-400 was chosen in, I think, 2018 when the contract was signed. And within 3 years, the deliveries have started. The radar of the S-400 is also very powerful since it has to detect objects as distant as 600 kilometers away. And therefore, the capability is incomparable as far as S-400 or similar vehicles are concerned. It is road mobile. It can be put onto a truck or a vehicle, mounted on a vehicle, and is easily transportable to various locations from location A to B or A to Z. And that brings in the flexibility that very few missile systems or air defense missile systems bring to the table. That's the advantage of S-400, and therefore India will be a little better off once these systems are fully deployed for India's air defense architecture in the coming months and years. Once that is done, the air defense architecture of India will be further strengthened. It has had some setbacks in the past decade or so. It was weakening because of lack of modern air defense system. But S-400 fills that gap and fills it admirably. That's all I have this week. You know our YouTube channel, of course, Strat News Global. You know where to get more information. You also, of course, have been giving us your feedback. Do continue to do that. Make comments. Ask us to do more subjects that you want us to discuss. And if you are new to this channel, do share, subscribe, and tell your friends about Strat News Global and, of course, Simply Nitin. That's all I have this week. I'll come back again with more information, other different subjects every week on Saturday. Simply Nitin brings to you different aspects of strategic affairs, military and foreign affairs. Until the next time, it's goodbye.